Something incredibly disturbing happened to the ancient Egyptians, and in this video, I'm going to share with you the mounting evidence that a cataclysmic event killed off the ancients that predate the dynastic Egyptians. For example, I'm going to discuss a destroyed pyramid that many who have visited the site and have studied megalithic structures for their career have described as looking like it's been blown up. Or even an entirely new pyramid discovered just a few months ago that is in ruins and buried under the sands of Egypt. What on earth would it take to destroy a pyramid? Or even take the bent pyramid, for example, as I'll discuss. What on earth would it take to put a huge dent in a pyramid? Or how about what would it take to knock down a 100-foot, 1,000-ton statue? Could it be more than just an earthquake? I mean, take, for example, the Colossi of Memnon, which I'll also discuss. Why on earth do they have incredible scorch marks on them when they're made and carved out of one solid piece of quartzite? I mean, quartzite melts at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In fact, they're finding sites throughout Egypt that have unusual scar and charring marks on the stones, which are just unexplainable. Is it possible that this all ties into a little-known fact that the Mideast is covered with melt glass? And the only thing that could have done this is atomic explosions or cosmic events such as airbursts or cosmic impacts. And I'll be discussing that in just a moment. Let me start off by discussing the destroyed pyramid of Djedefre, located in Abu Rawash, which is approximately 8 kilometers north of Giza. Mainstream archaeologists have no explanation for this and why it's been destroyed. They describe it as the top half of the pyramid is just completely missing and is nowhere to be found. They speculate that the stones, after being destroyed, was quarried and used for something else, and that perhaps Djedefre, the pharaoh, was disliked and they essentially, well, literally turned his pyramid into ruins. But when you look at these photos here, something tells me that it was far more than just a mob of angry ancient Egyptians with bronze pickaxes. I mean, even take a look at photos of the internal structure. I mean, this thing is just clearly something incredible happened to it. And just to clarify, if you've seen the documentary The Pyramid Code, which I highly recommend, you can find it on Netflix or YouTube, this site is not the same one that I described in a prior video about the unfinished pyramid of Zayat El Aryan, which is the one that the Egyptian authorities have since turned into a trash dump, as I described in that prior video. But no, this is not the same site that was in that documentary or visited by Brian Forrester, who I'll discuss in just a few moments. In fact, they're 10 miles apart and they're two totally separate locations, and they have unique features of themselves, but clearly there's a lot of similarities here as well. But speaking of Brian Forrester, I highly recommend that you subscribe to his channel. He is going to the field far more than any mainstream archaeologist. I mean, I can't say that for certainty. He hasn't said that, but he goes to dozens of megalithic sites throughout the world, many countries, places that you never even heard of. And he shows you firsthand through awesome videography, all the evidence, incredible details that have been left out of the textbooks. And this is the guy that inspired me to look into the topic of ancient human civilization, so you gotta check him out. And take a look at these screenshots that I took from one of his videos where he shows you these debris fields as well as these unusual char marks located on stones throughout ancient Egypt. So definitely go check him out. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, they found an entirely new pyramid just a few months ago in March of this year. And I actually made a video on this, but it's worth discussing again. This was covered by every single major news outlet throughout the world. And although there's so few photos of this site so far because they're still excavating it, the one thing that's absolutely incredible that was not even mentioned or discussed, I should say, in these articles is the fact that it's in ruins. Why on earth are they finding destroyed pyramids buried under the sands of Egypt? Because again, what on earth would it take to destroy a pyramid? And why are the mainstream archaeologists and Egyptologists not making a bigger deal about this? I mean, that's an incredible thing for a pyramid to be destroyed, is it not? And that brings me on to the bent pyramid. Mainstream will tell you that this pyramid was a design flaw, that essentially the Egyptians were transitioning from the step pyramid over to the traditional looking pyramids and they simply screwed up. But there's so many things wrong with that theory. I mean, clearly you can see here that the dent in it, or the design flaw as they call it, happens halfway up. So why didn't they stop, fix the problem, or just move on to something else altogether? Why did they bother finishing it? And not only did they finish it, they went ahead and laid all the limestone casing stones throughout the whole thing, top to bottom. Why bother doing that if you had already ruined the pyramid from the get-go? Is it possible that this is evidence of a major cataclysmic event? And that reminds me, I have to correct myself from my prior video, where I stated that the mainstream states that the step pyramid of Djoser came after the pyramids of Giza. That's not true at all. In fact, they state that it was the very first pyramid. But the point that I was trying to make is that there are approximately 80 known pyramids throughout Egypt, and obviously they keep finding new ones. But the Great Pyramid of Giza was built 7th, according to mainstream archaeologists and Egyptologists. So after the pyramids of Giza were completed, there's about 73 other pyramids that were built after. And when you look at these, you'll see that none of them compare whatsoever from the precision and sophistication to that of the pyramids of Giza. So the question again is, why is technology regressing? Why are the best pyramids the earliest ones, I should say? Now let me move on to the massive statue located at the Ramesseum. Nearly 100 feet tall and weighing estimated more than 1,000 tons. What on earth would it take to bring this thing down? I mean, I suppose an earthquake is a completely logical explanation, but just take a second to look at this thing. I mean, the feet themselves are up to my chest. And just to put it into comparison, the Statue of Liberty, although taller, weighs in at 225 tons. So compare that to 1,000 tons. But is it possible that some sort of cataclysmic event brought that thing down? I mean, look at the Colossi of Memnon, like I mentioned earlier. 60 feet tall, weighing 720 tons apiece, carved from one solid piece of quartzite. What on earth would it take to burn that thing? Quartzite melts at approximately 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So, I mean, guys, this is something far more than some gasoline dumpster fire by an angry mob. I mean, just look at this thing. Something incredible happened to it. And I made a video on this. It's one of my earlier videos. And by the way, this stone, the closest site they have where quartzite could have come from is about 200 miles away. So how on earth or why on earth would they bring something so big and so heavy this far? But going back to the evidence of a cataclysm, why are they finding vast amounts of melt glass throughout the Mideast? From Libya, Egypt, Syria, and this all coincides with the same exact time frame of the Younger Dryas impact boundary, which is found from more than 3 continents, and I would say that Africa now applies for continent number 4. So what on earth would it take to do this? Either an atomic bomb, which that's not where my bet is on, or an asteroid cosmic impact or an airburst. I mean, we all remember the airburst that happened over Russia in 2013, which injured 1,500 people and caused an incredible amount of damage. And that was equivalent to about 30 times that of the strength of the Hiroshima bomb. Now, when we compare that to the Tunguska event from 1908, that flattened more than 800 square miles of old-growth forest. And we're talking trees 150 feet tall with incredibly deep roots, and every one of them practically was leveled. And even the evidence is still visible more than 100 years later. And that, by the way, just to put it in comparison, registered at more than estimated 1,000 times stronger than a Hiroshima bomb. Is it possible that some sort of massive airburst, an airburst from hell, happened over ancient Egypt and just destroyed that civilization altogether? Clearly something incredible happened over Egypt at some point in time. And I highly recommend you look into the works of not just Brian Forrester, but Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Robert Bauval, John Anthony West, Christopher Dunn, Stephen Mehler. I mean, there's so many people that have inspired me to look into this subject. So you have to look into these people because I'm still learning new things every day. So if this subject interests you, definitely look into these people. But I'm going to leave it at that. I'm Jimmy. This is Bright Insight. Like and subscribe, and I have many other videos to come on a whole wide variety of topics. Take care, everybody.